Drew Marriott and John Watson.
Hello and welcome to final qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix round this very tricky Adelaide track. Going out right at the very beginning, and that's most unusual, Gerhard Berger, and they're followed by the two Brabhams, David Brabham and Stefano Modena. Well, Ayrton Senna has been the master of this circuit so far. In this morning's practice session, we had a brave and exciting run from Jean Alesi, who is just in front of us and going just a second. There you see him now, and Jean Alesi was fastest for much of the session, but then he had a spin, just touched some tyres and lost the engine, climbed out of the car, walked back to the pits, and in the closing 3 or 4 minutes of that practice session, Ayrton Senna retained his dominance. Senna, Prost, front row of the grid provisionally, Alesi third fastest, fourth, Mansell and Berger fifth and sixth, seventh Roberto Moreno, who tells me is still only driving at 70% of his capacity, eighth Thierry Boutsen, ninth Nelson Piquet and 10th Piero Martini. And there you see part of the circuit which is actually in the Parkland area, and it then dives into the city of Adelaide. Interesting circuit. 2/3 of it really is a street circuit, and a third of it is in a part that is really parkland, in which the horse race course is, and that's an extra bit of track. Now, Ivan Capello, lots of cars going out quickly here. We don't normally see this at the start of a qualifying session. Maybe it's because the street circuit, and I'm sure John Watson's got plenty to say about that. John, hello and welcome.
Hello. Well, street circuits traditionally pick up grip as the day goes on, and it is unusual, particularly to see Gerhard Berger out at the very beginning. And I'm maybe wondering, is Berger on a set of qualifying tyres, or is he still attempting to get a car balance, which he didn't achieve over yesterday and this morning's session? But watching him, he really is leaning on that car very, very hard, and to lean that hard, you've got a lot of grip. So maybe Berger has decided to take a chance, go out early and try and really establish a time, then sit back and watch how the session then will develop. So we have to wait. Berger almost now halfway around the lap, right over the curb. We've seen Berger doing this a lot this year, and of course coming onto that straight, getting up in the air, back onto the track. Not something I think is particularly worth doing, but it's his style of driving. Now at the end of the straight, into this tight, high first gear corner, second gear very quickly, third gear, then down into this even tighter left-hand corner, and then the final rush down to the tight right-hand hairpin bend, bringing us back onto the start-finish line.
Yes, well, a great flourish of activity as the session starts, and Gerhard Berger on a run. Street circuits always getting quicker on the second day. 1:16.661. Gerhard Berger moves up to third spot.
Well, that was certainly a qualifying tyre run, Andrew. And, well, Berger's just decided to do this. Get out straight away, set a time. He now can go back to the pits and have a thought about it. But, of course, with Alesi, who has got his Pirelli qualifying tyres, and we saw Alesi this morning spinning not just once but spinning twice. In fact, he's had a number of spins throughout the weekend, and he really loves qualifying. He just loves to get those qualifying tyres in the car, and really much more so than even going out and doing race laps, practice laps for the event itself.
Well, there is Ayrton Senna in the new Senna brand of t-shirts, giving us a very interesting interview yesterday, and pretty relaxed, happy to be the world champion designate, in fact, because he doesn't really take that title until he receives the trophy in Paris in the first weekend in December. And now we go in car with David Brabham. David has just done a 1:20.304, and that has moved him up the grid to 23rd spot, chopping half a second off his previous best time. So David Brabham in the race at the moment. Of course, the only Australian currently competing in Grand Prix racing. His father here to watch him, Sir Jack. Alan Jones, been a busy boy this weekend, the 1980 world champion. Alan Jones, we've seen him rushing across the skies as a co-pilot in a jet fighter. He's racing in the touring car event in a Sierra Cosworth managed by Frank Gardner. And the big story is he's also going to be driving round the circuit after this practice session with Cher.
Well, Andrew, I will say that will be the slowest lap of Alan Jones's life around any racetrack.
Yes, Cher doing a concert here at the end of the weekend after the Grand Prix is over. Everyone that's paid to get in gets a free share concert. They really do know how to promote at this Australian Grand Prix. Dr. Mal Hemmerling, a superb operator, backed of course by the South Australian government. As we join David Brabhams, he peels off into the pit lane at the end of his qualifying run, and currently in 23rd spot. David moved up one position. The four not in currently: Tarquini, Dalmas, Bernard and Gasho. Well, Bernard is a man we would expect to see in, certainly, and Eric Bernard had a big blow-up yesterday, had another one this morning, the Lamborghini engine certainly popping. This morning we saw the Lamborghini-powered Lotuses going very well, Derek Warwick looking impressive, and Johnny Herbert. Short Alesi out there now. Alesi pushed back to fourth spot, did one lap previously at 1:23.049. Jean Alesi looking at times in the 1:16s to retain a position near the front of the grid. The current pole position, Ayrton Senna, 1:15.671, that time almost a second faster than last year's pole position. So here is Jean Alesi, as John says, just loves to qualify, throwing the car around.
Well, this certainly is not a qualifying lap that he's finishing, but now I think he certainly will start a lap. And of course Alesi just throws this little Tyrrell Ford around, and of course the car is such a manoeuvrable car, such an easy package to drive, and Jean Alesi just grabs it by the scruff of the neck, chucks it into the corner, and that was really what caused the spin we watched this morning on the monitor. He came in really so quick to a section of circuit, he was just too quick for that part of the track, and really had no option. The car just got away from him, and he put the brakes on, dipped the clutch, and luckily he only just kissed one of these. Just at this point here, he came round here just too quick. The car went into a spin, and he backed it into the tire wall just to the left of that curb.
Yes, no damage done, but he lost the motor and couldn't restart, not allowed to restart in fact. And just up the curb there, always see these pictures of this Tyrrell with that big anhedral wing throwing off the sparks. Exciting stuff. Jean Alesi, maximum attack.
And he's so late in the brakes. The Tyrrell Ford has probably got the best brakes of any Grand Prix car here this weekend, and Alesi certainly knows how to brake late. And again, it's all part of this atmosphere that he generates about his driving. He's so enthusiastic, I say, particularly on this qualifying tire. He loves to drive the car on that limit, not so interested in setting the car up for the race. He really relies on the team's experience and knowledge to do that. Well, he's not. He's doing a 21.6, so maybe Alesi is not running qualifying tires. He's done 2 laps in the low 20s, so maybe Alesi is confining us all by doing something which he's never done before. That's really go for a race setup.
Yes, so Thierry Boutsen just going out now. Interesting to reflect that Jean Alesi has only had 3 finishes in the points this season. 2 of them second place at the 2 street circuits that we've had previously in the year, and then of course he had a 6th place also. Well, Nigel Mansell there, lounging around, waiting to do his run. Nigel's had a couple of good games of golf this weekend, won a trophy in the Grand Prix Drivers' Golf Tournament on Wednesday, and certainly enjoying himself out here.
Well, I must say Nigel's golf, he reckoned, was pretty impressive that day, though I watched some of it on TV and I pointed out to him that he was moving his hips too much, and I don't think he was very impressed by my criticism of his golf, because he thought 1 over par was pretty good.
Yeah, he's playing off a 5 handicap at the moment, Nigel. He has been down to 2 at one stage in his career, and of course it was out here in Australia that he played in his first professional tournament. He played in the Australian Open, and in fact his first round was really quite good, but subsequently he went to pieces. But that's what golf's all about, putting in 4 really good rounds. Well, Nigel maybe would have become a professional pro celebrity golf player next season if he hadn't gone back on his decision to retire. Well, certainly that's our gain. Jean Alesi getting his car weighed. We'll be back in just a couple of short moments. Grand Prix. There is the star of the Japanese Grand Prix, little Roberto Moreno of Brazil, and he's now warming up for his quick lap. Currently shown in 8th place since this practice session, final qualifying session I should say, started. We've seen a really quick one from Gerhard Berger, a few other improvements. The top 10 currently, Senna, Prost on the front row, Berger, Alesi, Patrese and Piquet. Mansell is 7th, he hasn't been out yet. Moreno currently 8th, just out on his first qualifying lap now. Boutsen 9th and 10th Martini have had quite a big improvement from Ivan Capelli, currently shown in 13th spot. Well, there is Moreno. Moreno saying this morning that he still feels he's not really as hot as he was at the end of the season when he won the Formula 3000 Championship with the Bromley Motorsport Reynard. Feels that he's still building up to that fine age. Rather an unusual comment from a Grand Prix driver, John.
Well, I would have thought any driver who said he's only driving at 70% really is only getting the one leg out of bed. A driver driving at 70% shouldn't be in a Grand Prix. I think he's maybe exaggerating and looking for a little bit of compliment about his race in Japan, which was an outstanding drive. But I would say Roberto Moreno is driving close to 99% of his ability, because to drive in a team like Benetton, anything less would not justify that drive.
Oh, well, there he is, just nipping past Ivan Capelli. Moreno grew up in racing with Nelson Piquet in Sao Paulo for quite a lot of the time, originally from Brasilia. And chucking the car around a fair bit, that Ford Cosworth HB engine chiming away in the back. And just watching the timing monitor to see if Roberto has improved, and it could be an improvement. Stops the clock at 1:18.9. No, considerably slower than the qualifying session yesterday, John.
Well, we wondered why Gerhard Berger went out at the very beginning of the session. I just wonder, was it because at the time the session began there was a little bit of cloud cover over the sun, and the track may be slightly quicker when there's cloud cover. Since then, of course, the clouds have rolled back and we've had a fairly clear sky. The track temperature is very, very critical. It may have risen just those few more degrees, and that may be making the difference between, for example, Berger improving substantially, but nobody else apart from Capelli, the middle field runners, moving forward. So I think some of the team managers may well choose to watch very closely indeed. I mean, this man, Jean Alesi, went out, and his time was 5 seconds off what he did yesterday. Now, that must be the first time in Alesi's life he's used a qualifying session to do something other than qualifying.
Well, I think maybe Uncle Ken Tyrrell been waving a finger at him a little bit. Jean Alesi does get over enthusiastic sometimes, and this is a race where he really could do well. I mean, there is a definite chance that if he really kept his head and drove at his very best, he could just win this one if a few other things happen, John.
Yes, indeed he could, and I think, as you say, Ken Tyrrell may, for once in the season, have gotten Alesi to understand and appreciate that to get on the podium at a Grand Prix, and here in Adelaide particularly, he's going to have to commit himself to doing tank runs of maybe 5 or 10 laps on a race tyre, because if you don't find out what the car is going to do after 1 or 2 laps, well, then you might as well not even bother. So it's so critical, and of course Alesi's got a really good opportunity to get on the podium. So maybe Ken's advice and Ken's tutorage, really is how best you can describe Ken Tyrrell as a team manager, is finally sinking through. And of course Alesi's last race for the Tyrrell team, well, he would like to be on the podium and of course get any of those points, first, second or third place.
Well, you didn't see it on the screen, but just going out again, David Brabham, of course running on Pirelli tyres, and the Pirelli runners tend to get more qualifying laps in, their tyres recycled as Alesi nips past 2 cars, and there we saw Emanuele Pirro in the Dallara. Still some of those smaller Italian teams yet to settle their exact driver lineups, John.
Well, we're still waiting, I think, to see what the sponsorship of those teams is going to be. Really, once the sponsorship has been decided, that will, of course, indicate which drivers may be going. But here we are, in with Nigel Mansell going through that very, very fast corner onto the main straight, up the curve. This is Nigel's first qualifying attempt. He's done a lap of 1 minute 18 minutes. He's been in the pits, in fact.
Yes, currently 7th on the grid. Nigel Mansell at a 17.294 yesterday. Bit of oversteer there, puts the opposite lock on. And this circuit is very tight indeed. John drove round in one of those new super Mercedes BMW 8 Series as passenger to Tim Schenken, the former Australian Grand Prix racer, who was the clerk of the course here yesterday, John. I think you haven't raced at this track. You're really quite surprised about the narrowness and naggeriness of the circuit.
Well, Nigel Mansell has just leapt up to 5th place with a 1 minute 16.938. So for Mansell anyway, there's been some improvement today. But just being driven around the circuit yesterday, these corners, the camera does not give you a true indication as to how... Oh, and there's Alesi doing what we've seen him doing twice already today. a little bit of frustration temper there. He must be on his race tires, and of course that's the very reason why you have to do these long runs. You have to find how the tire will change through the course of the race. But for example, this section here looks quite long. You come down, it's an off camber left-hand corner. You've got to hold the car on tight, then a change of camber to the right. This is where Alesi went off this morning. He came in too quick, but really all this is much more condensed than it appears on screen. And it's a very high workload circuit. And of course the level of grip is quite low as well. So the driver has got a long race. It's almost a 2-hour race. A very high work rate, a lot of gear changing, a lot of braking, fatigue, and we're anticipating a very high temperature tomorrow, certainly in the low 30s. So fatigue, dehydration, tyre wear, all those factors are going to contribute greatly to the final results.
Well, there we go, in car with David Brabham as he continues still talk about whether he's going to continue with the team. There seems to be a chance that he may be able to continue with the team. Any news on that one, John?
I think Brabham are looking at other people, but David Brabham has, despite lack of results, well, here we have Jean Alesi again losing the car. This time he manages to keep the engine running, up the curb, just again kissing that tire wall, but getting it back into gear, driving onto the track, a big boot full of dust and gravel now for everybody else to contend with. But back with David Brabham here coming across the start-finish line. They get a lap from David. Well, 1 minute 20.218. Some improvement certainly on yesterday.
Yeah, still remains in 23rd spot though. He's 24th yesterday, earlier moved up one spot, and 20.2. Well, no problem about him qualifying for the race, and of course he has had problems at various circuits, including Monaco, a rather similar track to this. This is one of 3 street circuits on the World Tour. John, how do you rate it against Monaco and, of course, well, I suppose the rather bland circuit in Phoenix?
Really, it falls between those 2 circuits. Monaco is, if you like, the archetypal Grand Prix road circuit because it runs through, in every respect, the day-to-day roads of Monte Carlo. Here in Adelaide, we use some of the streets, some of the main roads of Adelaide, but of course then we go into this park section of the circuit, which is part of the Adelaide horse race course. Whereas Phoenix is really a grid system type racetrack. In other words, roads run north, south, east and west, so you tend to get right angle corners. The benefit of right angle corners, let me say, is of course it invites overtaking, whereas at Monaco overtaking is almost impossible. In Adelaide we've got a little bit of both. It's neither as easy as Phoenix or as difficult as Monte Carlo.
Well, there's David Brabham on his slowing down now. Good time to take a short break.
Saturday.
Prost, the deposed world champion, and what can he do here? Yesterday won 16.365. John?
Well, he's just beginning his first flying lap. We saw him just coming to the end of the initial warm-up lap. Now Prost out on his first flying lap. And let's contrast his lap with that of Nigel Mansell's we saw a few minutes earlier. Oh, and Prost looking a bit more like Mansell than we've seen him for a long time, getting the tail well out. Alan Prost really fired up. In fact, he's so fired up he's refused to get any further interviews.
Well, we got him without microphone, John, and it certainly gave us a lot of food for thought there. Well, do you think the man really will retire?
I think the loss, let's say, of his chances of winning the championship or continuing the championship hope in Japan really was a big blow to him. He really did feel disappointed, frustrated, disillusioned even, and I think thoughts of retirement may well have gone through his mind. I would say he will not make any decision until certainly he's had this race. If he came away from here a victor, I would not doubt, I would believe he will continue as a Ferrari Grand Prix driver in 91. If he had a bad race here, let's say if there's another incident like Japan, then I think he may well decide, well, I've had enough of this, I don't need it anymore. So this race, I think, is going to be a very crucial race in Prost's decision-making process for the future.
This is looking a good lap, John.
A very good lap indeed. Well, it looked good coming out of the heaven bend, but it didn't happen.
Yes, just picking up that point again, FISA issuing a statement here on Thursday that they're going to set up a special commission to look at driving tactics and all those sort of things. I mean, they're going to look at it in retrospect, and I suppose they're going to look at the tapes. We haven't been told who's going to be on this commission to study these various incidents. I mean, personally, I think it's overreaction. I don't know what your view is.
I think there is a need for some body, or whatever you like to call the group of people that can make a decision where you have got very controversial incidents on the racetrack. and really where there's a case of bad driving or somebody's been consistently ignoring or being unhelpful on the racetrack. Now, who make up that board, I don't know. I personally think it should be people who have driven Grand Prix cars as opposed to people who are purely administrators. But we've got to wait and see what is being decided.
What are your charges, you think?
Well, currently a lot of people do it for free.
Yes, well, do you? Senna still retaining that pole position, 1:15.671. He hasn't actually been out on the racetrack yet today. Prost still second, hasn't improved. Berger, the man that put in that early improvement, fourth. Jean Alesi certainly hasn't improved today. Fifth, Mansell, who has improved. Riccardo Patrese currently sixth. He hasn't been out on the racetrack today. As we look at little Alex Caffey, stooped down in that cockpit of the Arrows, that team doing more testing of the Porsche engine at Silverstone last week, as this man, the new world champion Ayrton Senna, comes out for his first touring lap before he really steps on the gas and tries to put his pole position totally out of reach from any of the opposition. And really, he is looking so magnificent here this weekend. He always seems to be good on street circuits, John. Well, he's good everywhere, but he really does excel.
Well, he's just outstanding everywhere. The one question mark that has been the big discussing point over the last 2 weeks is his rationale in racing. He had an interview with Jackie Stewart the other day, and Jackie asked him a very leading question, and he got very upset about it. He felt that people are having a go at him about the outcome of Japan, and the fact that in spite of all his brilliance, his flair, his undeniable ability, he does get involved in controversy. He's had collisions with a number of people because in the press conference he gave on Thursday he denied any responsibilities at all. Of course, that's fired up people to be even more aggressive to him in their questioning. But the man is superb, and particularly in qualifying, and in fact in races as well. And I wonder just sometimes, it's not his ability comes into doubt, it's the ability of other people that I think he sometimes overjudges. He gives maybe other drivers credit for being better than maybe they are. I have to say that doesn't apply to Alan Prost. That was an entirely different situation. But remember in Nakajima back in Brazil in the early part of the season, he got involved totally unnecessarily. Had that been Prost or even Jackie Stewart or other drivers, they would have, if in doubt, they'd have backed off.
Yes, I mean, he had that race in the bag, didn't he?
Absolutely, and he threw it away by just maybe believing that Nakajima had more room, or the fact that Nakajima, he didn't realize that he couldn't really do very much more than he was doing to get out of the way in the first place.
Well, let's just watch this. This is magic. Attacking Senna, going to improve his pole position, driving at the very supreme of his magnificent ability.
That's a right mouthful there, Andrew, but let me just say, Ayrton Senna is the master. Well, look at that, I'm just saying he's the master. He gets his car over the curb as well. But in these qualifying situations, it looks very simple, but in fact it's not. It's quite tricky because the qualifying tire requires a particular way of being used. Senna has evolved that particular ability to a very, very fine point indeed, but even he's finding trouble. He did not wish to go over that curb. That was something that he was probably surprised about. I would expect this lap not to be certainly as quick as what he did yesterday afternoon. He did 2 laps in the 1:15s yesterday afternoon, and let's see what he's going to do at the end of this lap. I suspect it will probably be a low 1:16.
Yeah, you've certainly been very good at predicting those laps all through the season, John. Don't quite know how you do it. I think you've got some sixth sense there. Well, there you see the clock ticking away now. Senna looking to improve on 1:15.671, coming towards the line, and no, does not do it. 1:16.208. John Watson's right again.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Well, I have to say, just seeing the car, when he came out of that corner, the tail stepped well sideways up the curb. That's an indication that the grip on the circuit and how the tyre is reacting to the circuit is not quite as good as it was yesterday. And of course Senna would have adjusted his driving style all round that lap, but of course in making that adjustment he's making compromises, and therefore that's tenths of seconds on every corner. That was the reason why I said I thought the lap might be slower, certainly in the low 1:16s. Thank you, Ayrton, for confirming what I thought.
John, of course, in these very same colours, you won a magnificent street race in Long Beach some years ago. A race where you came from, was it 23rd on the grid or something, and carved your way through the field. I mean, how difficult is it to pass on a street circuit, and how would you compare Long Beach with this particular Adelaide track?
I find passing on street tracks in some instances extremely difficult. On other racetracks in 83 at Long Beach or 82 at Detroit, because our car and tyre package began to work in the race, which it had failed to do in qualifying, I had no trouble. I could get the power on early in the corners, I could brake late into the corners, I had good turn-in. So really it comes down to the ability of the car, the tyre, the driver to work harmoniously to provide the opportunity to open the throttle. And really driving a Grand Prix car, the key to it is just getting the throttle open earlier and wider than your competitors. And that's what I was able to do in Long Beach, and consequently we went on and won the race.
Yes, but
it all sounds very simple, of course.
Does. But it isn't.
It's not at all. To get to that particular point is extremely difficult indeed. Teams spend days doing it at a racetrack. They come to racetracks, not street tracks like Adelaide, but they just test.
Riccardo Patrese, this is his first attempt at qualifying today. Patrese currently shown in 6th spot with a 1:17.156. One of the few people not to go out until halfway through the session. Johnny Herbert, another one incidentally. And just looking down the timing list, Eric Bernard hasn't been out yet. He's still not in the race. The four not in now, Alboreto and Caffey in the two Arrows, Bernard and Bertrand Gachot in the Coloni.
Well, Riccardo Patrese getting quite wide coming onto the straight again, goes two left wheels up the curb. Patrese's time from yesterday was a 1:17.1, so Patrese, I don't know, is going to be any better off than we saw Senna a few minutes ago.
One big improvement, we haven't seen it on the screen, from 19th to 11th spot, Derek Warwick. So we told you earlier on that the Lotus Lamborghini package was certainly working a lot better this morning. They seem to have sorted the car. Derek saying that the car is a bit of a flexible beast, not the stiffest of chassis, and that seems to help it round street circuits. So Derek very happy, no doubt, with the 11th spot in what could be his last ever Grand Prix.
Well, Patrese's lap was 1:17.449. That it didn't either lose in position or gain in position, so Patrese still in 6th place. But just explaining to you, Andrew, or to the listeners, the viewers, what Derek Warwick means by a soft chassis. The flexibility of a car on a street track like this, the advantage that has is that there are not very many very high loads going into the chassis, so therefore the distortion that might occur through the chassis not being rigid has less effect on the suspension in the car and on the aerodynamics. And this quite often been the case. Cars have performed well on the slow racetracks where they've been poor on faster circuits, so that Lotus chassis probably not quite as stiff as some of the cars at the front, appearing to, well, it really flatters the car. It's like a wet race. Sometimes people win wet races, and really wet races, as good a drive, let's say, as Boutsen had last year, is not really a true reflection on the performance of the driver or the car. It just happens to be an outstanding performance on the day.
Well, in car with Nigel Mansell. Mansell going out on his second run, currently in 5th spot, and always a great street racer, Nigel, so it'll be interesting to see if he can improve.
Well, he did improve on his first set. He took 0.3 of a second out of his time on Friday. Nigel now really very anxious. His last race for Ferrari before he has his retirement, then to come out of retirement and jump into the Williams, in between which he'll probably have a few rounds of golf and explain why he's doing it yet again. But Nigel, we've seen with some remarkable races in his 2-year stay at Ferrari, and of course, like many drivers who are changing or leaving, would like to leave on a high note. But of course Alan Prost really is the man in Ferrari who's in charge and in control of the situation. And it was only because of Mansell's agreement to support Prost in Japan that Mansell really got equal equipment. Now, I don't know what the situation is here. I suspect it's a free-for-all. I do hope that Ferrari are going to give Nigel equipment that is equal to that of Alan Prost for this race.
Bertrand Gachot behind him there in that bright yellow Coloni.
And poor Gachot really getting held up badly by Mansell. Well, that's the penalty a driver at the back of the grid in a non-competitive car pays, because Mansell did not want Gachot to pass him, and basically he just prevented Gachot from completing a lap, and now Mansell's got a clear road ahead of him and beginning his second qualifying run. And this is really the last chance he has to get further up the grid, currently on the 3rd row in 5th spot.
For those of you who don't join us regularly for these qualifying programs, just to remind you about some of the things that go on. Each car only allowed 2 sets of tyres. They mark the tyres, only allowed 2 sets. They can run a qualifying set of tyres which will only last for a lap, and they can run 1 set of race tyres which will last for a number of laps or many laps, or any combination really, but only 2 sets allowed, so most people just make 2 quick runs, and that's what we're seeing Nigel Mansell doing now, making his second run on his second set of qualies. Locks up a brake on him too.
Yes, he locks up that right front. We saw him locking up a left front quite a lot in Japan. Now he got the right front locking on, but that's braking very, very late, very deep indeed into the corner, and part of that very late braking caused him to have to turn in slightly earlier for the corner than I think would have been ideal, but of course that's the penalty of braking very, very late. But here he is back onto the pit straight. I think it's going to be an improvement for Nigel. Yeah, 16.352 on the front row of the grid, alongside Ayrton Senna and Alan Prost bumped to the second row of the grid, and Nigel must be happy with that.
I think that was a perfect illustration, John, of how if you just keep it all in control, you can get that quick time. That didn't look a particularly spectacular lap.
It looked a much better lap than the lap on his first set of tyres this afternoon, and of course that's the advantage of having been out on 1 set of tyres. You learn how the circuit differs, so he would have moderated his driving and adjusted accordingly.
Well, those are the times that Ayrton Senna is looking at before he goes out on his second run. A good time to take another break.
Alive! Get the action.
As Gerhard Berger picks up speed, his second qualifying run, just going on to it, accelerating now, maximum speed across the start-finish line, and Berger made a big improvement on his first run at the very beginning of qualifying, has had almost 40 minutes to think about that. And let's see, he goes very wide there and very, very close to the wall.
Yes, he got the back of the car again well out. He had to straighten the car out first, then pull it away from the wall. Well, certainly he knows what the circuit is like from his first run, and he was virtually the first car out. But of course now the sun is out, clouds roll back, but Berger trying very hard, but he is actually staying off the curbs generally more than we've seen him doing in the last number of events. Let's see through here, yes, using less of the curb, and I think as a result he's being much more efficient. He's using the grip that he has more productively, and that will help the car, the speed of the car down the straight now, coming down to this very tight right-hand hairpin bend, getting the power on. Again, the back of the car fidgeting, just stepping out into third gear. This tight left-hander up again, the back of the car stepping out, and he's got now Nakajima just ahead of him. Nakajima on his out lap. Whether this will affect Berger's time, we have to wait and see. It probably will a little bit, because watching that car directly ahead of you is always discreditable. Berger 16.244 out of the front row along with his teammate Ayrton Senna. So Berger on both sets of tyres has improved, and that was a better second lap. And I'm quite sure, had Nakajima not been there, that lap might have been a high 15.
Well, Nigel Mansell contemplating that. Bumped off the front row of the grid. There you see the current positions: Senna, Berger, Mansell, Prost. Then on the third row, Alesi and Patrese, who's just gone out again. And on the fourth row, the 2 Benettons of Piquet and Moreno.
Well, if you get a McLaren on the front row, 2 McLarens on the front row, that's certainly going to make for a less exciting race, because they will just be able to block all the way down into this very tight first chicane, about 400 metres after the start. And once they get through that, if they get through together and cleanly, then it's going to be a real struggle for Mansell or for Alan Prost to get by. And really, if it's going to be a race of pit stops again, we're going to have to wait until the first third, possibly first half of the race, before we can see any real excitement occurring on the racetrack.
There's 22-year-old Gianni Morbidelli, and he looks he's on quite a quick one. Morbidelli currently shown in 20th spot. The man who, of course, has been racing Formula 3000 most of the season. The man whose father designed and built some winning motorcycles, World Championship winning 125 and 80cc motorcycles back in the early 1980s. So very much from a racing family. And Morbidelli across the line there. In the Minardi, the team that have got those Ferrari engines for next season. And Morbidelli's time, a 1:19.543. Johnny Herbert out on the circuit at last. And just see the labels on the tyre, so that shows that he's on a fresh set, on an out lap.
And Johnny Herbert was very impressive this morning, Andrew, in the on-time session, and really looking now to get himself re-established back into Formula One. And of course, probably his best opportunity would lie at Lotus, because if Peter Collins, who is involved with the team in trying to raise sponsorship, is successful in that task, then I think his first choice would be Johnny Herbert. He's a driver he pioneered or championed at Benetton in '89, and in a sense really it was rather too soon for Johnny after his awful accident at Brands '88, but Johnny Herbert now appearing to be almost completely recovered from those very severe ankle injuries, leg injuries he had, and really beginning to show the form that we saw in him back in '87 and '88 in Formula 3 and in Formula 3000.
Yes, let's not forget that in his debut race in Formula One in Brazil, Johnny Herbert finished a stunning 4th place. Meanwhile, we're seeing Lotus in those yellow colours for the last time, John. Of course, that deal has moved over to Benetton for 1991. We still don't know exactly what the Lotus sponsorship deal is, or indeed what the driver lineup will be for next year. Renault, another possible perhaps for Lotus if he doesn't stay with Benetton.
Little Johnny Herbert working very hard coming through the chicane. You can see how much movement. The fairly low sides on the Lotus. And look, he's really chucking that car around, and look how much that car is bouncing. I mean, that must be a very, very uncomfortable ride for Johnny Herbert. The car jumping up and down as well as side to side as he tries to get the traction, the horsepower down to the road, and really Herbert giving absolutely everything he has. He's almost literally holding his breath as he comes through every corner. He's having to work very, very hard indeed. The car getting a little bit loose halfway through the corner, having to back off the throttle, then get back on it again, losing momentum coming onto the straight, going past Philippe Alliot and his Ligier. Also the last drive for Alliot in Ligier, and one wonders where he's going to go. In fact, I think Herbert actually decided to slow down and give up that lap. He's on his way back. He's maybe going to try and have another go. Whatever went wrong for him, he didn't feel it was worth continuing, and he may try to preserve those precious qualifying tyres and hopefully get another shot.
Yeah, meanwhile, Stefano Modena has improved substantially. Lopped, I should say. 1 second off his yesterday's time and moved up 16th place. And David Brabham has a big lead.
Yes, it is. That was a fairly, he kept it off the wall as well.
Well, that's the second time he's done that today. Did it in the morning practice when the camera was running. So the curse of the camera strikes yet again.
It certainly does. Bring home and tell everybody across the world what has gone on in the cockpit. But that's just the problem of a street track. The level of grip between you have it and you don't have it is so fine, so minor, that if you go off quickly.
I just saw there the lovely names and helmets that they've got over these temporary pits here. They don't look temporary, but it's a very clever system which all takes to pieces as Jean Alesi goes out, and is he now on qualifying tyres?
Well, he's just on a 1:17.246, which is slower than his time from yesterday. So Jean Alesi, of course, he's got his Pirelli tyres. He can go back and shave another couple of millimetres off them, but I think it's going to be quite a difficult task for Alesi to improve on that time. That 16.8 he said yesterday, but Nelson Piquet currently with a 1:17.173 in 7th spot on a second run. Again, the experience of Piquet showing through there, trying, saying experience, getting the power on again, the back just snapping into oversteer. But of course a driver like Piquet will try to moderate that. He'll not try to drive through it, he'll try and drive. Oh, Piquet, you nearly lost it there.
Very nearly off.
Giving him the benefit of the doubt, saying how moderate he is, and well, he's just given up. He said, forget that for this lap. I'm going back again, back into the pits, cool these tyres down, have another go maybe in the remaining 8-10 minutes of qualifying. But that just illustrates the difference I was saying about when you've got grip and when you don't have it on a street track. It's such a fine dividing line. Look at that, completely sideways, and the car bites back the other way. He just about keeps it off the curb, but he's has to get off the power. This is real tippy-toe stuff on the outside of the circuit. The track is dirty there. Nelson's heart probably was well over the 200 beats per minute. Into cavitation, I would say. And he'll be back in the pits now for a quick drink of water.
Or something. Yes, only 4 of the top 10 have improved today. We expected, and normally at a street circuit everyone goes quicker, the circuit gets more rubber down, but it's quite a bit hotter today, John. That might have had something to do with this. Senna, of course, has only done 1 run so far and was over half a second slower than he had been yesterday. Alan Prost turned the engine, they say, and Alan Prost will go out in the Ferrari. The little Frenchman very unhappy with what the French press have been writing about him, not giving any more interviews.
Well, he's going to have to find almost a second if he's going to get himself onto the front row of the grid. Berger, who's second currently, is on the front row with a 16.244. So quite a lot of time to find, and remember the best Prost has done today is a 17.121. So he's going to have to do a lot of work if he's going to get himself back up onto the front row to join that old protagonist of his, Ed Senna.
And as he came out of the garage there, we got a quick look at our faithful cameraman Ollie that shoots all our features, doing the job as usual.
Well, Alan Prost now, this is the chicane just after the pits, a real bottleneck at the start of the Grand Prix, and then coming down now to that sequence of streets that make up Adelaide, and then onto the long straight, and therefore back to the pits.
Very pleasant city, John, the city of churches, a lot of green around the place, and I think you've been enjoying it. Had a quick trip around the Barossa Valley, that wine-growing area. John Watson, of course, something of a connoisseur these days, and that was an enjoyable little ride round when we were working hard on Thursday, of course.
Well, I had my share, and I had your share as well, Andrew. But the Barossa Valley, of course, is... Oh, look at that. Martini's engine appears to have blown up, or certainly a lot of oil came out from the left-hand side. Yes, or I can't see left, right-hand side, whichever side it was. Martini's got a problem, but in the meantime, Alan Prost coming onto the straight on his second set of tyres, gradually building up speed, and really, I suppose, today with the change in the track conditions, it's very difficult to know, to decide at what point on that outlap you pick up the speed. Do you want to really wait until the end of the lap, or do you do it halfway through? Certainly Prost choosing not to build up speed until he's almost complete. We've got one of the footwork arrows, I think Michele Alboreto behind him. He will not want to let that Arrows car get ahead of him at this point in the circuit.
Meanwhile, of course, Michele's fighting to get in the race. 27th fastest, Caffey is 28th. Eric Bernard has now finally been out. They've got another engine running at last in the Lola Lamborghini, but he is 29th fastest, has actually improved a bit over yesterday. And then Bertrand Gachot, well, he's 3 seconds off the pace. And
well, Alboreto has just got himself in the race. He went fractionally quicker. He is now 26th on the grid, the last car in the race. In the meantime, this man, Alan Prost, is looking to try and get back onto the front row of the grid. He's currently on the second row alongside Nigel Mansell. But Prost, we saw in his first set of tyres, really struggling because he didn't have the normal smooth Prost-like progress around the streets of Adelaide. So let's have a look and see if he can moderate and at the same time really find that missing second from his first qualifying run today.
And quickly, the man who's been bumped out of the race is Yannick Dalmas in the AGS. That's the fastest point of the circuit just before braking there, down what is called the Brabham Straight.
Well, this lap so far of Prost looks just about, we got a bit of oversteer coming out of there, but looks not bad. But really, from the in-car shot, it's very difficult to predict what sort of time it's going to be. We've just got to wait another 3 or so seconds, we will know.
17.020, not good enough.
No, Alan Prost is going to start from the second row of the grid. And that really will not make a the unhappy Frenchman any happier at all. So disappointment for Alan Prost. In fact, to be slower than Mansell. The time that you see from Prost, of course, is the time he set yesterday. And he was on the front row, so he's literally lost 2 positions, 1 to Berger, 1 to Mansell.
Same with Senna, he hasn't improved, and he's leaving it to the last 5 minutes to go out and do that second run.
In the meantime, we've got Roberto Moreno coming down to take the track. He's on his second set of tyres. You see the labels on the tyres. David Brabham following him down. This is Alan Prost, of course, slowing down on his way back to the pits. Letting some of the other cars who are still qualifying, attempting to qualify, to get through. And you can see his head looking from side to side, and that's Alan Prost, ever aware that there are other drivers on the racetrack. Now we have David Brabham coming out for what I would assume is his final qualifying lap. They've seen a little bit of excitement from David Brabham with the in-car camera. He's had a couple of spins, certainly. We saw one only a few minutes ago, and we saw a few others in the on-time session this morning. The camera doesn't lie.
David Brabham has dropped to 25th position, and if he's not careful, he could get bumped out of the race, only 0.3 of a second in it.
And in fact, Tarquini has bumped Alboreto. Tarquini now 26th, Michele Alboreto out of the race. Of course, Alboreto has reused his tyres, so things not looking at all good for Michele Alboreto and the Footwork Arrows team, with only 1 car currently in the race.
And it's getting pretty busy out there. Suzuki leading that trio.
Yes, Aguri Suzuki, we've been watching him all weekend and really buoyed up by that performance in Japan. He's been driving, I would say, really completely over the top. He's been driving too aggressively. He's been forcing his driving much too much, and consequently we've seen lots of spins. He stuck the car on the tyre wall twice yesterday. He did it again today. Now we got the rearward shot out of the back of David Brabham's car. You see Suzuki just passing him there at the end of the straight. And there he is, the man on pole position, Ayrton Senna, making his final qualifying run. Just waiting a minute to be allowed to join the circuit. And that doesn't look like a new set of tyres to me, Andrew.
It looks as if they've done some work, but I don't see why he wouldn't put a new set of tyres on, because he has only made that 1 run.
Well, we'll know very shortly.
In fact, John, you said there was 1 Arrows in, but that's not the case. The Caffey's not in either at the moment. So Arrows having a miserable old time. Just check that situation out again. The 4 not in are Alboreto, Dalmas, Caffey and Gasho. Tarquini 26th and on the bubble. But at the front end of the grid, it's very much this man from Brazil, 30-year-old Ayrton Senna.
And he's got Derek Warwick now behind him, but I think Warwick is on a slowing down lap. We just saw the yellow Lotus in the background. And Ayrton Senna again taking this out lap very, very slowly indeed, really trying not to put any load or energy into those tyres, be the qualifying tyres or just soft race tyres. Certainly the tyres didn't have labels on them when he came out of the pits, so they have been tyres that he's used already.
John, going that slowly, is he able to look at the racetrack surface and judge that at all?
Not at that speed, really. All he will be able to do is just pick up the speed and decide at what part of the track he wants to start picking up to racing speed, but really he's going around so slowly. In fact, all he's doing is probably picking up more rubbish, dust and any residue of rubber that may be laying in the track. So I'm not really convinced that Ayrton is looking for a final out-and-out qualifying lap. I think he feels that his 1:15.671 from yesterday is going to be sufficient to retain pole position. But let's watch and see what he gets up to here, because that was really a very slow out lap indeed, the slowest I think we've seen of any of the front-running cars today.
Oh, there he goes on to his final qualifying lap of the 1990 season. And let's see if it's something special. He locks up a wheel.
Yes, but he's not driving. There's not quite the energy you can see that we've seen on other qualifying laps. He's not really getting stuck into it. But of course, we have to wait until he completes that lap. Sometimes with Ayrton now, his qualifying start has become so smooth that it is deceptive. And in fact, often the slower he looks, the quicker he is going. but I would imagine that this lap is not going to be as quick as what he did yesterday, and I doubt it may even be as fast as the lap he did on his first set of tyres this afternoon.
Yes, fans of Eric Bernard, and he has a good number. We'll be pleased to know he is in the race in 23rd spot. Bernard actually quicker than his teammate Suzuki. That Lola team having a terrible weekend. But everyone concentrating now on this man, Ayrton Senna.
The checkered flag is out and Ayrton Senna is coming across the line. Well, that's pretty impressive, 15.693. Certainly the quickest lap today. Well, it's about 20 hundredths, was it 50th of a second off what he did yesterday?
Yes, just John, one quick thing. The flag man there who does all that flourishing with the checkered flag, Glenn Dix his name is. The Australians reckon he's the best flag man in the business. A lot of controversy early in the week about him because he was going to be banned because he actually stands out on the racetrack, and FISA don't like that. There was heavy duty meetings, and finally it was decided that Glenn would still be allowed to wave the flag in his spectacular fashion, but he had to stay back nearer the wall. But he does add a bit of fun to it all.
Adds a bit of colour, but certainly just going back to Ayrton Senna's lap, it did not look at all impressive, but the lap was so close to what he did yesterday. It is quite difficult right now to judge what times people are doing.
Well, this session now at an end. It is an all McLaren Honda, front row of the grid, Senna and Berger. Third fastest, Nigel Mansell. Fourth, Alan Prost. Two Ferraris on row 2. Then Jean Alesi, fifth, with Riccardo Patrese alongside him, and then a fourth row of the grid full of Benetton Fords of Piquet and Moreno. Ninth fastest, last year's winner Thierry Boutsen, and remaining through all this session in 10th spot, Pierluigi Martini, who has improved today. 11th spot, Derek Warwick. In 12th position, good performance that. We didn't see him all through the session. Nicola Larini in the Ligier, very good performance. 13th, Satoru Nakajima. 14th, Ivan Capelli. In 15th spot, Andrea De Cesaris. 16th, Mauricio Gugelmin. In 17th position, Stefano Modena. 18th, you'll be a little disappointed with that, Johnny Herbert. 19th, Philip Alliot. In 20th position, Gianni Morbidelli. 21st, Emanuele Pirro from his yesterday's time. 22nd, Oliver Griard. 23rd and 24th, the two Lola Lamborghinis of Eric Bernard and Aguri Suzuki. The Aussie is in the race, 25th, David Brabham, and the final man to stay in the race, Gabriele Tarquini. The four who didn't make it, Alboreto, Dalmas, Caffey and Gasho. So that's the lineup for tomorrow's final round of the World Championship. Join us for the race live on Eurosport, of course, but from John and me, it's bye-bye for now.
Thanks to Andrew and John for that exciting Grand Prix action from down under in Adelaide. If you're a night owl, there's more live action beginning tomorrow morning here in the UK at 2:15. But if you feel like a Sunday morning